Hello, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon and good evening, wherever you are, whatever your time zone. Welcome. This is AI Talk, and I am your host, Kevin Crane. Welcome to the show. Today, we will be discussing the topic of updating your IT strategy for agentic AI and how agentic AI coding agents are transforming the future of software development. Agentic AI is redefining the future of software development by bringing new levels of speed, autonomy, and complexity to how code is written and deployed. For example, in a recent survey, adoption of agentic AI tools in software development rose from 50% to 82% this year alone. But with this rapid shift comes urgent strategic questions. IT leaders must rethink their strategy, governance, and security to ensure safe, scalable implementation. So, what should we consider? In this session, we'll explore three discussion points. We'll talk about how agentic AI coding agents are transforming the future of software development. What does that really mean for developers? We'll look at why agent autonomy demands a new approach to governance, testing, and oversight. What are the aspects to consider with testing and oversight? And we'll look at how to mitigate agentic AI security risks and ensure safe deployment at scale. What steps are essential today? So, look, we're going to dive in with a great panel of guests here in just a second. But first, I want to say thank you to everybody attending today, and that includes the folks that are joining us on LinkedIn. Thank you so much. And hello to everyone joining us today on Zoom. Thank you too. During today's discussion, I'd like to hear from you folks too. So, we'd like to encourage everyone attending today to participate. Please join in with your comments here in the chat section. If you have a question along the way, just jump on in. I will attempt to get some of your comments and questions into the flow of the show as we are talking today. All right, we've got a lot to cover and a great panel of guests, so let's get to it. Starting with our first guest, Derek Ashmore. Derek is AI Enablement Principal at Asperitas Consulting. Derek, are you with us?
I am, Kevin. Thanks for having
Welcome
me.
aboard, Derek. Where are you calling in from today?
Calling in from Brooklyn, New York.
Wonderful. Brooklyn. All right. Very good. New York, the greatest city on earth. Thank you so much for being here, Derek. Also
Thank
joining us
you.
today is Brian Finster. Brian is a principal engineer focused on using AI for process improvement. Brian, are you with us? Where are you calling in from today?
Coming from Bentonville, Arkansas.
Arkansas. I spent some time in Arkansas, some great caves down there. Fantastic. Thank you, Brian, for being with us. Also with us today is Brian Greenberg, Chief Information Officer at RHR International. Brian, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Good morning
Uh,
from Chicago.
Chicago, wonderful Chicago. I have a trip planned to Chicago later this year, so I'm looking forward to that. Well, Derek, Brian, and Brian, welcome aboard today. Thank you so much for being with us. Today, I'd like to start our discussion by pointing our attention to an article published recently by CIO called Building Trust in Autonomous AI, a Governance Blueprint for the Agentic Era. Look, the article warns that trust is essential for scaling autonomous or agentic AI in business. We can't rely on agentic AI alone because without human insight, oversight, clear accountability, and robust governance, its decisions can be biased, unsafe, or opaque, creating some legal and ethical and operational risks. So I'm wondering what you all folks think about this article. The article talks about a proactive framework where it includes human accountability, explainability, and ethical guardrails. I'm curious what you all folks thinks about this article. Derek, what are your thoughts about the article today?
Basically, what I thought is it tended to conflate governance with trust. And governance is important. I'm not diminishing governance and safety at all. But when we talk about trust, basically, it people talk about does AI help me, right? Does it actually help in terms of making me more productive in terms of software development and change management and whatnot? The article did talk a little bit about customer customers evaluating bias. I think customers more are centered on does it help them, and I can't blame them for that. So
I see. I see, Derek, you're making a distinction between governance in terms of security and some of the things that we typically think about. But this is really trust, human trust, in terms of trusting that AI will actually do something good for me and not mess me up, if you will. Is that about right?
That is correct.
All right, interesting perspective. Well, thank you. And Brian, what are your thoughts on the article? It does propose a framework. Number one, human accountability. Each agent must have an owner, explainability, and auditing with clear decision tracing and ethical guardrails and bias mitigation. That's a lot. Do you think that that's a good framework? And if so, how do we accomplish that?
I think there's two things. One thing I always tell people is that you're still responsible for the outcome of what you generate when from a code, so I'm a developer. So when I'm coding, it's still my code. I'm still responsible for how it works or not. And the ability to explain what it does. But I think there's also a lot of opportunity here from a platform. If you're developing, platforms correctly, you're building guardrails to make it really easy for people to deliver with their work and really hard to make mistakes. I think there's a lot of opportunity here for a platform organization to make it a lot easier for people to onboard into an AI assisted development world without having to rediscover how to do it in a way where it's safe.
Interesting. Now, Brian Greenberg, Derek was bringing up this distinction between trust and governance. The article mentions that companies should treat governance as a strategic investment, allocating 5% of their AI budget and empower senior leadership and the board to oversee AI risk. Are those measures enough? And is that allocation of budget enough?
At the very least. I enjoyed this article a lot. I think it's long overdue. There's AI suffers from kind of the shiny object syndrome. People, it's sexy, that people want to start using it right away. Agentic makes development incredibly fast and fun, but without the governance structure put in place from the top of an organization that by its very actions would engender trust within the platforms themselves, you could be running full speed into a brick wall. It's really important to have these governance structures in place and to invest in that. This is such a young technology. AI in of itself is incredibly young, but agentic is obviously even younger. And we really need to be thinking very, very hard about how we deploy, how we test, how we leverage these technologies within the organization and at large.
All right. Well, the article is from CIO. It is called Building Trust in Autonomous AI. There is a link here in the webinar chat. We'd like to hear from you folks too. What do you think about the article? Does it resonate with your place of business and your experience? Does it miss something important that we should be considering? So take a look and let us know what you think. All right. All right, gentlemen, I'd like us to move along to our first discussion point today. We will be digging into some of these aspects as we go along today. But first, let's talk about how agentic AI coding agents are transforming the future of software development specifically. Agentic AI tools are increasingly able to generate and test and deploy code autonomously, potentially boosting productivity while challenging the traditional development workflows. Derek, from your experience, what are the most promising or practical use cases for agentic AI in enterprise software development today?
Basically what I've seen is that basically the whole environment has moved from developers physically typing in code or whatnot to concentrating on what the target is. In other words, we're moving to spec-driven development. What that means is I concentrate more on what outcomes I want, and my agent team basically implements that for me. I also concentrate a lot on how to verify that what my agent team produces actually works and actually what was intended. And that's a different perspective than I grew up with as a developer early on. It's just to my mind, that shift takes a little bit of getting used to for most developers that I'm I've been associated with.
Now, Derek, you were mentioning earlier this idea of trust versus governance and really the idea of what does AI really do for me? How should organizations approach this, integrating AI agent tools into existing pipelines without disrupting stability or compliance?
That's a great question. I think what it comes down to is automated testing and verification of what AI produces. I'm also seeing a lot of variance depending upon what tooling is being used. All right. If you go canvas what people think about AI, you'll see differing opinions. Some people think it's great. Some people think that they haven't had good experience with it. But if I drill down and I look at what tooling they're using, there are drastic performance differences between, and I'm not talking about speed, I'm talking about quality of output differences between what tools that you what tools that you use. And I think that this whole scene is moving at light speed. And I mean, for instance, the tooling that I'm using basically didn't really exist 8 months ago or 7 months ago, right? It's fairly recent. And that kind of speed doesn't seem to fit a lot of corporate acquisition models. They tend to be slow and deliberate. And that's going to have to, in my mind, at some point, it's going to have to get adjusted.
Mm.
But I'm getting off your topic.
Well, you bring up some interesting points. And Brian Finster, I want to ask about your perspective as a coder and an engineer. How are you seeing AI coding agents reshape traditional DevOps practices and developer workflows today?
Uh, well, I'll tell you the workflow that Derek was talking about is the workflow that everybody who does continuous delivery has been using for a long time. Spec-driven development is basically a rebranding of behavior-driven development, which is a key workflow that you use. So you can do continuous integration, so you can do continuous delivery. What I'm seeing is that people who are already good at continuous delivery are falling right into an AI workflow with no problem at all. The excitement I have is we've been fighting so hard for the rest of the industry to catch up, and now there's this tool that only works if you're using these workflows. So that's really awesome. And from a, the thing that the warning that I have though, so for me, DevOps is not platform. DevOps is the entire process we use for delivering everything. Okay. The warning I have is that cool, I can develop software a lot faster, orders of magnitude faster. I use it professionally daily. But if the upstream processes for the information coming in about what we're building is bad, if the downstream processes for how we're actually delivering that is bureaucratic and slow, all I'm doing is growing the amount of undelivered code inventory, which represents risk that I'm building. And so we really need to look at it holistically. It just can't be let's make developers more productive. We have to make the process of software development and delivery more productive.
And what about the developers themselves, the teams? What skills or team structures will become critical as AI takes on a more a day-to-day role in coding and testing?
Honestly, I don't see a big change in the way I've been working for the last decade with small teams, really focused on understanding what we're building before we start building it. And then collaborating together to get it done. Making sure that we, are using a set of review agents that we can all agree on and improve, so the review agents can cross-check the code faster, and it just improve the tooling we're using as a team, so that we can just get everything done more quickly. And focus more, like Derek said, on what we're building instead of how we're getting it done.
Now, Brian Greenberg, you are a CIO, and from a CIO's perspective, how do you see agentic AI changing the balance between between IT strategy, software delivery speed, and governance?
Well, we're doing a lot of investigation and testing and reviewing. I think the agentic AI will help organizations arrive at their destination faster and sometimes fail faster depending on how their particular agents go. Where I've seen it most drastically being employed is in on the cybersecurity side of things, because agentic AI has been leveraged heavily as an attack model, an attack method. And so more and more companies are and products are leveraging agentic to defend against it, because you need that kind of speed. You cannot think and analyze as quickly. And so I see it most activity there. Um, Regarding the governance for it, I've talked to a number of other leaders where you have an onboarding process of agents. Like you would onboard an employee, you onboard agents that understand your policies and your and if you're regulated, all the kinds of regulations that you need to adhere to, as well as then the responsibility, which was also mentioned in the article. If an agent goes rogue and causes millions of dollars in damages in one way or another, who's responsible? Is it some computer or is it the person who deployed it? And that becomes a very interesting conversation to have.
That is a very interesting conundrum there. And I'm interested in your comments about using agentic to defend. That to me, that excites me. We're using AI to defend against cyber threats. What strategic considerations or other strategic considerations should technology leaders be thinking about now to prepare their organizations for this new agentic development paradigm?
I'm sorry, it
And that,
broke up. I don't know if that was for me, and it broke
yes,
up a little
indeed, Brian,
toward the
yes.
end. Can you repeat it? You broke up
Well,
for
yeah.
me. Sorry.
So, what other, besides using agentic to defend against cybersecurity threats, which is exciting, what other strategic considerations should leaders be thinking about now in order to prepare their organizations?
You know, it, so much of it takes so much time to process, to understand the capabilities of agentic. So whether or not you're using, like, for example, the way I've been testing it in different sorts of ways, and just a couple of weeks ago I came across a bug that in a product that I was using, and realized um, and I was working with an AI, and it's like, well, there are no known bugs on this particular platform. Would you like to submit a bug report? I'm like, yeah, I would. And I put it in agentic mode, and I had it do it for me. Now, it took a little longer, but it was very interesting to watch it do the things, and it wouldn't, say, click to the next thing without me authorizing it to do that. So there was definitely a human in the loop. And taking that into consideration for whatever kind of process flow that you're leveraging agentic for is incredibly important, I think.
Before we move on to our next point, I'd like to open up this question to everyone here. If I'm a developer, I'm a worker today, I would think that would be very natural for me to be worried about my job. Do developers need to be worried about their jobs? And if so, what should leaders be telling their teams, and how should we be approaching that fear of our staff that indeed they'll be out of work soon? Anyone have any comment for that?
Well,
I do. Go ahead,
Please.
Brian.
okay, I'll just jump in real quick. I don't think they should fear for their jobs. I read an interesting study recently where I wish I could remember the article to share with you, but it was some radiologists and radiology medical programs that were saying with AI and machine learning and things like this, just don't even bother going into the field, because everybody was afraid that their jobs would go away because AI would be interpreting these sorts of medical imagery. What wound up happening, though, was that the demand for radiologists skyrocketed. They needed more radiologists because the AI wasn't replacing but augmenting their capabilities. And I think the same thing is going to be happening with software developers as well. You know, when I've used AI to write code, I've looked at it and it was okay. It got like 80% of it there, but it wasn't efficient. It wasn't fast. It wasn't modular. It wasn't reusable. And then I had it scan its own code for security issues. And it's like, oh, yeah, here are 37 different security issues. I'm like, well, great. Thanks for introducing that from the get-go. And so you need experienced, thoughtful individuals who already know how to do it to, play the grown-up in the room and to
Mm.
oversee what's going on. So I don't see developers going away. I see them leveraging this technology.
The only caveat I'd have on that is I don't see like software engineers who are building things who understand what it is they're building um, going away. I see what I would consider commodity coders who you hand me a task, I write code, it goes out the door. I don't care about anything else. Um, Now I have robots that can do that. So if you're a developer who focuses on the code instead of what we're building, I would take it up a level and focus on what we're building.
All right, very good. Let's move on to our next discussion point. Today we are here with Derek Ashmore, Brian Finster, and Brian Greenberg. This is AI Talk, and we're talking about using agentic AI in software development. And indeed, if you have a comment or a question for our panel today, please feel free to pop it into the chat feature here. We will try to get some of your comments and questions into the flow of the show. And indeed, the best comment or question wins a very stylish and highly functional AI Talk coffee mug, or bourbon in this case. All right, very good. Let's move on to our discussion point number 2 today, gentlemen. Why agent autonomy demands a new approach to governance, testing, and oversight. Of course, as coding agents operate more independently, traditional human-centric QA and governance models may not be as sufficient as we need them to be. Now, Derek, how can organizations rethink their testing strategy to validate not just the code, but the behavior and the decision logic of agentic AI systems?
Uh, Basically, I'm fond of saying that if you grant security privileges to an agent, you own whatever mistakes that agent will eventually make. All right. And that sounds a little bit harsh, but it's got to come down to somebody authorizing that agent to do things. And in practice, what I tend to do is make sure that there's a human in the loop. So for instance, I don't necessarily commission agents to go out and physically change environments. I may have them propose changes and make changes to infrastructure code or application code and give a human a pull request review or something like that. But I'd be hesitant to have them directly do do things in environments that affect large numbers of people. But we might get there someday, but in my mind, we're not quite there yet.
Well, it is early days. And Brian Finster, what guardrails do you feel or governance frameworks do you feel are essential to maintain quality when agents begin writing or deploying code autonomously?
Well, I kind of look at it like signing a document. I've got this big document, and whether I read it or not, it's my signature that goes on it. On a recent personal project, I had Claude start committing code to version control without me asking it to, and I had to be very explicit in my configuration to do not touch Git. That's me. That's my thing. That's my area of governance. And with quality, the traditional quality processes a lot of people use is way too slow. I mean, you really actually have to move quality left now, which means how do we build agents that are very, very good at doing things like, oh, you added a bunch of security problems, or oh, these tests are really, really bad. I mean, these are all things that are possible now that you can really speed up the quality process. But at the end of the day, it's again, we are responsible. We can't go blame a robot. When someone says, "Oh, a robot dropped my database," no, you allowed a robot to drop your database.
This is interesting, this idea of responsibility. Now, Brian Greenberg, from a CIO's point of view, how does this agent autonomy change the CIO's responsibility for risk and compliance?
By making sure that there are proper mechanisms in place to prevent runaways, that you do have the guardrails in place, you do have ownership of any kind of deployment. It's absolutely essential. Everybody needs to share the responsibilities instead of just running amok with a cool new toy. They need to be able to own it as well. So having human in the loop, having a lot of human QA, trust but verify is what I like to go with. And frankly, a lot of times, a lot of the things that I suggest, sometimes people might get frustrated with because it feels like it's too slow. But I believe that, you need to slow down to speed up. So when you can slow down to put the right processes in place, to put the right guardrails in place, then you can still move much, much faster with certain kinds of friction is good within these processes. Going completely frictionless is not.
Mhm. Well, we do have a question coming in from our audience, but before we do, I want to ask all of you, or just pop in here, what is one early warning sign that my organization's governance model isn't keeping up? Anybody have a warning sign I should be aware of?
Um, well, this is all very, very new, but I think it would be, the same sort of warning signs I'd look out for if, honestly, if I was offshoring development to a company that didn't have a really good reputation. Are we getting all sorts of bad results in the end? Is the code becoming complete spaghetti? I don't know. This will be really interesting as it evolves. It's so new. I don't have
Yes.
a good answer.
Yeah, I have a tendency to gauge it by defect rate, right? So when defects are going up, that's an indication to my mind that something's going wrong with the process, or I do pay a lot of attention to DORA metrics. Not that they are the end all be all, but if you start to see those metrics start to indicate decreases in quality, that usually means that something has changed in your process that might be an early warning of something
Yeah.
you should pay attention to.
And for me, I'd say there are three other indicators as well. One, uh, who screwed up in the news? Like this morning, Cloudflare went down. Now, I have no idea why yet. It's new. Could have been an agentic agent that made a configuration change that nobody suspected. We've seen a number of failures happen recently. Two is any kind of proposed legislation around AI and responsible AI. And three are security questionnaires that you get from your customers that want to understand your policies and procedures around AI because they're thinking about it. And if they're thinking about it and you're not, they may not agree to be
Mhm.
your customer. So those are some canaries for me.
All right. Excellent warning signs. Thank you, gentlemen. We do have a comment coming in, and I want to thank you for your comment today. I am not going to be able to pronounce your name, but thank you for your comment today and for being with us. And the question is, how best to get started in using AI to code Android apps? That's an interesting question. Anyone have some feedback? Android specifically?
Yeah, I'm not an Android developer, but as far as I know, for the most part, um, you're developing in an IDE and writing code. It's just that you're deploying it to an Android device to test it. Um, I believe you also have an emulator. It seems to me that the way to get started is just to try to use it to start writing code, and then start seeing how you can integrate it into the rest of your flow. I'll tell you, somebody asked me about how to get started with AI, and I said I keep asking it to do things I don't think it can do, and see what happens.
Yeah.
All
The
right,
the
this
the
comment.
other thing the other thing is I would just go ahead and I learned by doing, but that's just me. Um, I would reiterate Mr. Finster's point that just go in and plunge. The water's warm. Uh, Basically, um, source control discipline. Make sure that you can always get back to a known good, because eventually in this journey, something will go awry and you'll get something, AI will produce something that you don't expect, whether you
Mm,
deploy it on Android or any other type of device. And you have to be able to get back to a known good. So I throw away probably 30 or 40% of my feature branches now because something went awry and I want to
all right.
start fresh. That happens now.
All right, and this coming in for us from Kristen. And Kristen, thank you for your contribution today. Kristen asks, any thoughts on X as code, like Doc as code with Sphinx needs? It sounds like an enabler for scaling agentic AI use. Traditional enterprise companies love their GUI tools for complex systems, but I guess this is also somewhat preventing the use of AI in some of the industries. Gentlemen, do you have a comment or a thought for Kristen? Anyone?
So I'm not sure if this is what she's asking about documentation. I'll say that that at least Claude and ChatGPT, when I've asked it to generate documentation for something, it's awesome. Documentation is one of those things that's always the last thing that gets touched, and it's usually wrong. And if I code something, Claude will go and generate a great how-to document for getting started. It'll go into lots of detail, and it'll even keep documentation in sync when I tell it, hey, go review the documentation against what we're actually building here and make sure it's true. And when you're trying to onboard people and share knowledge, documentation is really important. And the ability to just generate that with very little effort means it'll actually get done instead of maybe sometime in the future when we get around to it.
Yeah, I haven't done any of that, but while Brian was just talking, it made me think of, wow, an agentic agent that persistently keeps your documentation up to date sounds fantastic to build, either summary docs or logging docs, summarize what's happened over time. Sounds like a very low risk and very effective use of an agentic agent within development.
All right, we are here. This is AI Talk. We're here with Derek Ashmore, AI Enablement Principal at Asperitas Consulting, Brian Finster, a Principal Engineer and an expert in AI and process innovation, and Brian Greenberg, Chief Information Officer at RHR International. All right, gentlemen, let's move on to our third discussion point today, and that is mitigating agentic AI security risks and ensuring safe deployment at scale. Autonomous AI agents are introducing new security vulnerabilities, from unauthorized code changes to data leakage, and this requires some fresh approaches to the threat modeling and deployment controls. Derek, what best practices are emerging for securing AI agents, particularly around access control, data privacy, and auditability?
Basically, I alluded to it in one of your answers to one of the other questions, is that I have a tendency to use agentic AI to manipulate code that's in source control, be it infrastructure code or application code. I always put a human in the loop. I rarely will let an agent actually make changes in the wild or in actual environments without a human basically approving the action. So that is, it might appear that kind of slows down as you scale up. But I think at this point it's kind of necessary. Maybe at some point we evolve to a different level, but right now you always have to have a human in the loop, and you always have to be able to get back to a known good.
Interesting that you mentioned it may slow down as it scales up. That is exactly what I was thinking when you were talking, Derek. What about over time? How can organizations test and validate that their deployments remain safe and compliant at a scale over time?
That comes down to automated testing and static code analysis and dynamic code analysis. We have tooling, whether the code gets there via humans typing or it gets there via agentic AI. We've got tooling that will go and look for security issues and problems, and that is a tool set that I imagine we'll continue to use.
Mm-hmm. Now, Brian Finster, we are concerned that AI agents will be introducing new security vulnerabilities that we may not be aware of. What types of security risks do you think AI systems introduce, and how can teams evolve their practices to manage those risks proactively?
Well, I think the first thing we need to be aware of is that bad actors have been using AI to attack people for a long time now. So they're very familiar with how to use those tools to go after us. So they're ahead of the game about where to attack. But as we start rolling out, because this is a new platform, as we start rolling out these new platforms, You've got new attack surface areas that you can exploit. I mean, we have MCP interfaces to go along with, do we even have our APIs secured? Now we have MCP interfaces we have to secure. Where are the vulnerabilities? We have to learn all those things. And personally, I don't even know yet. I'm still trying to catch up to this. Um, I think from an enterprise point of view, number one is to dive in and start trying to find out where are all the holes before they get, someone exploits them, because they can get exploited a lot faster now. From a developer point of view, hey, focus on your main quality aspects, because those are all related to security, especially security vulnerabilities. And when you're developing things, they're not done if they're not fit for purpose, and they're not fit for purpose if they're not secure, performant, available, compliant. You have to focus on these things. You can't just throw code out the door and just pray that no one's going to exploit it.
And Brian Greenberg, we're under pressure to balance the push for faster AI-driven deployment with the need to protect systems and data. What organizational or cultural changes beyond the technology are needed to make AI-driven security an integral part of my enterprise?
Well, we're working with a number of vendors that specialize in this. We're not pretending to know how to do it all. That is not our core competency. So working with those organizations are incredibly important, but also internal training of threat vulnerabilities, phishing assessments, things like that. But also what concerns me, most of all, we were talking about different vectors of security and AI, combining all of the technical, developmental, and automated cyber attacks through AI, combined with the coupling of deepfake technology in both audio and video, is to me one of the greatest threats, because an AI needs 3 seconds of voice and a still picture of you to create a video. I've done it to demonstrate to my leadership group to say, here I am. I think I created a conversation with me and Sam Altman at OpenAI, and I've never met him, but we were having a conversation. He was welcoming me to the company. That kind of deepfake attack with social engineering and leveraging also through out of band channel of cyber attacks, automated cyber attacks on infrastructure, is probably, those combined, some of the greatest threats that we're going to have in cybersecurity.
Well, Brian, you bring up an interesting aspect that I was hoping we would have time to get to. And in the time that we have remaining, look, we're talking about, as you mentioned, Brian, deep fakes. We're talking about AI agents acting autonomously. You know, this has many people that aren't particularly in the industry, or many people in the industry, concerned about where we're headed and the potential lack of real governance. And I'm talking about real governance. Looking ahead, everyone, what kind of standards and regulations do you think will need to be put into place? How do we do that to keep agentic AI systems secure and within the bounds of where they're supposed to be operating, and or hopefully avoid things like deepfakes and rogue agents? What standards and regulations do we need? Anyone?
Yeah, so I would say, though, don't wait for regulations. Get ahead of it, because regulations either are strongly resisted by businesses, or it just takes way too long for governmental or agencies to be able to put those in place. In the case of deepfakes, for example, we have been instituting a kind of multi-factor authentication for video chats. So we could be on a call. You've probably read about the unfortunate company. There was, if I recall correctly, a guy who was on a Zoom call with their chief financial controller and CFO, and they were talking about, hey, a new deal has come across. We need to wire like $12 million to this account. And so three of them were on this video call, just like we are today, and they authorized that person to transfer the money, and they did it. And only like 30 minutes later did they realize that was a deep fake.
Mhm.
We just had $12 million stolen from us. And so what we've done is come up with out of band multi-factor. What is the code word of the day? What is the secret phrase that nobody could find in any other way. What, where did we go for lunch yesterday? Whatever it is, to help provide authentication, just like you use authentication when you log into your email through an MFA device.
Okay. Brian's saying, don't wait for legislation. Well, do we trust that organizations will be faithful in their standards and regulations? Anyone else have some suggestions of what we should be doing as a society, indeed, to make sure that we have the right guardrails in place? Anyone?
Man, I don't know. It's getting really hard. Brian brings up the deepfake issue. There's people in general aren't going to have the resources to go and have the tooling to verify that something's a deepfake or not. As far as businesses go, I've been doing this job for long enough to understand that businesses will do the absolute minimum required to be able to uh, help their bottom line. And so I don't have a lot of faith that people are going to be proactive until they get bit, personally.
All right.
And I mean, to add on to Mr. Finster's point, I think you can trust organizations to act in their own best interest. So as Mr. Finster says, when something bad happens, they will change their behavior. Until then, they probably will do what's cheapest and most cost effective. And as individuals, I have a feeling we tend to work the same way. There's a reason that things like deep video fakes work, because to ferret those out takes a certain amount of effort that everyone isn't willing to spend all of the time. So,
All right, very good. We are here today with Derek Ashmore, Brian Finster, and Brian Greenberg. Gentlemen, where has our time gone? We are almost out of time, but before I let you go, I'm wondering if each of you could please provide us with one quick action item that our viewers can use to take advantage of your ideas and advice. Brian Greenberg, do you have an action item for us?
I kind of mentioned it earlier. Go slow to go fast. Be thoughtful about what you're doing. Yeah, go slow to go fast.
All right, that is Brian Greenberg, Chief Information Officer at RHR International. Thank you, Brian, for being with us. And next, Brian Finster, do you have an action item for us today?
Specifically for developers, we're all learning this at the same time, which is exciting. But if you bury your head in the sand and say this is all going to go away, you're going to be flipping burgers. So you need to dig in.
Very good. That is Brian Finster. Brian, thank you for being with us today. And Derek Ashmore. Derek, do you have an action item for us today?
I do, but it copies Mr. Finster a little bit, for people resisting it. And I see it all the time on social media posts. The water's warm. Get used to the new world. It's coming. Denial is not a great strategy. It has a very low chance of success. So don't do it.
Resistance is futile.
Exactly. All right, that is Derek Ashmore, AI Enablement Principal at Asperitas Consulting. Derek, Brian, and Brian, thank you so much for being with us today. What a great panel. Your perspectives and advice were spot on, so thank you so much. I hope that we get a chance to talk again soon. And to everyone joining us today, thank you too. Join us again next time on December 2nd with another great panel of guests discussing the topic of the missing link between digital transformation and AI. And I'll tell you a hint, it's data. That should be another great discussion. Meanwhile, if you'd like to find me, you can do so on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect there, so check me out. I am Kevin Crane. And check out my weekly audio podcast, the Digital Transformation Podcast. But for now, that'll do it for this episode of AI Talk. And until next time, I'm Kevin Crane saying thanks for watching.